New this morning, Richmond police are investigating the shooting death of a man on Hull Street Road. Officers responded to the area near Silverwood Drive just after 2:30 yesterday afternoon for a person down. They found the man with a gunshot wound and he was pronounced dead at the scene.
Just behind me here, you can see some more of that damage on Chamberlain Parkway. Behind me, that garage, the roof burnt, and these buses just completely mangled. This is the stack of charges of previous animal care and cruelty, all tied to the man authorities believe is responsible. Now, we're not releasing his name just yet because he has not been formally charged in this case. But residents who say they've observed concerning behavior at this property behind me for years now are left wondering why this took so long.
Hanover authorities have confirmed that the remains found near a rec center on Friday night are human. They also say they possibly know who the victim is.
Well, most of us have probably heard the saying, when thunder roars, go indoors. But what about the lightning strikes that follow? Well, first responders here in Central Virginia tell me it is rare for a house fire to get started because of a lightning strike, but it's most likely to happen right around this time of the year. I'm told the goal is actually to lower taxes for homeowners, or at least keep them from going up, with the new businesses and hotels that are built here set to get a portion of what they bring into the county back. Now, as we've been reporting, this site is set to feature the country's largest surf park. Difficult to think about on a day like today, but still at this point, we don't have a timeline for when we'll see that in operation. Authorities responded, there were weapons in the home, and we know that both of these now suspects were there, and only one of them was taken into custody. So why one but not the other?
That's getting into the specifics of the investigation.
I think the concern is also that same weekend there was still a mass shooting. 6 people were still shot on 4th of July, and no doubt it could have been bigger with this other incident, perhaps at the Dell. But I suppose, you know, what is the update on that investigation, first of all, and was there some strategy here to say, let's focus on this mass shooting that we prevented and not the one that unfortunately did happen?
The one that did happen, it was a different circumstances.
The report revealed that Tyvon Eldridge unexpectedly fell to the ground during a training run on July 1st of last year. He was treated by paramedics on scene before being taken to the hospital. But after less than 48 hours in the ICU, he passed away just as he turned 26 years old.
Tyvon Eldridge would have been just days away from celebrating his 27th birthday. Instead, his name is etched in the Chesterfield Fire and EMS Memorial. Fire Chief Loy Center noting this is the first recruit death in the department's history.
Vibrant young man who's just started his career, his dream job, lost in a minute, and we certainly don't want to see that happen again.
Today, nearly a year after his passing, the department released a report on what happened during that first day of physical training last July, ultimately determining that the young recruit died of heat exhaustion 16 minutes into a 2-mile run. The report showing the weather conditions that day and including recommendations to avoid this tragedy in the future, like keeping an EMS bag in the chase van during recruit runs.
When he did collapse, I don't know that it would have made any difference at that existing time period. But it is always good, if it had been some other type of emergency, to have that gear available if you're using that training van.
Records show that Eldridge was medically cleared for training and that the department was unaware of any existing medical issues. The report also noting that he was physically active, leaving questions about how this could happen.
Ty was only with us as a member of our department for several days, but I think in his passing, he taught us all a lot about why we're here, why we're in this job, and how we need to remember that we can lean on one another when times are tough.
Chief Center tells me this investigation is by no means over. He says the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health is also investigating, and that as an arm of the CDC, they will hopefully be able to answer more of the questions about why this happened. That report expected sometime within the next year.
First of all, lots of confusion at the Henrico courthouse earlier today, and it stems from dozens of renters from this property behind me standing up for what they say were wrongful evictions. Now, in total, this is impacting about a quarter of the units here at the Point at River City apartment complex, many of them waiting on rent relief payments just to go through.
Hundreds of apartments soon to be empty if renters in more than 200 units get evicted from this Henrico County complex.
A couple of months' rent is not a lot of money, but it's enough to land a person homeless.
Celine Avent is just one of about 50 tenants at the Point at River City due in court this Friday after falling behind on rental payments.
At like 10:30 last night, I got an email from Rent Relief telling me that my funding had finally been released and it should be received to my management company within 3 business days. So, you know, fingers crossed that it actually does go through that swiftly because, you know, they're ready to see their money and they're ready to either see their money or see us in court.
She says she applied for rent relief back in January, right around the same time a new company, Aon Management, took over her apartment.
The new property owner failed to apply for rent relief on behalf of tenants, failed to submit the paperwork even where tenants themselves applied, and then they waited out the clock for the rent relief application process to close before sending out notice.
Laura Dobbs with Virginia Poverty Law Center saying even though new applications aren't being accepted, money is still being paid out, leaving renters like Avent to wait and hope for the best.
There's always going to be struggles in life, but we just got to keep pushing and it'll be all right.
Now, today's more than 100 cases were continued or pushed back, with more scheduled for the end of this week. However, many renters at the courthouse today tell me they were unaware of the change and showed up anyway. Now, I did try to speak with apartment management here on site as well as counsel back at the courthouse earlier today, but was told no comment. Stick with us on air and online as these cases develop. But for now, live in Henrico County.
The resident with whom I spoke has been dealing with AC repair issues for more than a week now, and inside her apartment, it was definitely hot as well. Now, overall, she says the past year has been particularly difficult due to the pandemic and her own health struggles, even requiring instances of medical leave. But it's been made worse with ongoing issues at her apartment complex.
Water damaged ceilings and central air out of order.
It's become more than unbearable for me. It really has.
As outside temperatures climb to the 90s this week, residents like Sharon Butler are desperate for help.
All efforts have been fruitless for me, fruitless.
Butler says she submitted several maintenance requests for her unit, which have been marked completed despite temperatures still climbing in her apartment. Last week, it reached temperatures in the upper 80s, even hitting 93 degrees at one point.
Ultimately, living under this type of stress, having to keep on dealing with these things, to wake up in the middle of the night and your house temperature is 93 degrees, all of that, why?
By the end of the week, Butler says a temporary AC unit had been dropped off without warning that a worker would be stopping by. But it's not enough to keep the entire apartment cool. She also showed 8 News the water damage on her ceiling made worse by recent rain. And it's not just maintenance issues that Butler says make her situation dire. She is one of more than 200 residents whose housing is in jeopardy at the Point at River City Apartments, formerly known as 11 North, after issues with rent relief payments. The 2-year tenant left feeling like she has no comfort in her own home.
After everything that you've gone through here, why not just leave?
Because I can't. I cannot financially afford to. I can't. If I could, I would have been gone.
Now, I did reach out to the management company for the apartment complex where Butler's been living, but am awaiting a response. Stay with us on air and online as we continue to dig into this story.
Right here in Richmond, UNOS has a multi-million-dollar contract with the federal government, something that CEO Brian Shepard tells me is primarily paid out by hospitals and organizations that they work with. But the nonprofit is now under fire, facing accusations of mismanagement and inadequate security, something witnesses said during that Senate Finance Committee hearing yesterday is costing precious lives.
A precious organ luckily salvaged for transplant despite the box arriving with tire marks on it and the container inside ruptured. This, something surgeon Jamie Locke says is all too common.
There's very little in healthcare that has the immediate life and death stakes as organ transplantation.
That's why UNOS CEO Brian Shepard appeared before the Senate Finance Committee in Washington, D.C. yesterday, with members of Congress sharing their concerns with the nonprofit following more than 2.5 years of investigation.
Far too many Americans are dying needlessly because UNOS and many of the transplant organizations it oversees are failing and seem uninterested in improving.
Errors matching donors and recipients, transportation delays, and patients dying from infections. So why the errors? Senator Ron Wyden says it comes down to UNOS's mismanagement. Other panelists at the hearing also backing the senator's accusations.
While anyone can track their Amazon or FedEx package, there is currently no consistent way of tracking these life-saving organs.
DonorNet is outdated, difficult to use, and often slow to function when every minute counts.
But speaking one-on-one with 8 News today, Shepard disagrees.
The USDS report says, for example, that we don't use the cloud, when in fact we do. They said that we don't use electronic data transfer, when in fact we do.
Wyden says their investigation is ongoing, but Shepard says they will continue to work with organizations throughout the country that help transfer organs to patients in need to make sure that organs will not go to waste.
There's certainly lots of opportunities for all of us to improve the donation and transplant system, and that's what UNOS's mission is and what we do every day.
Now, during the hearing, witnesses called on Congress to separate UNOS's overarching functions. But Shepard, who's actually stepping down as CEO next month when his contract is up, says that the U.S. government has a role in this too, and that enforcement is their job. More details on this on our website, but for now we're live in Richmond. Olivia, Jaquith, 8 News.